other projects in terms of our project planning and processing. If we can master that at a local government, necessary capacity is assisted by the national government in assisting us on these issues. We're also faced by the issues of climate change in our city, my city, which is Buffalo City. We're prone to climate change. Every 3 months or so, we're faced with climate change. So we are looking forward in people coming, investing in our city as Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. We've been going out of the country, looking at countries like your China, which are resilient in terms of infrastructure. But if you want to have an inclusive infrastructure development, you must make sure when these investors come into our country, our people are benefiting from these projects. There's some way of integration with business benefits. And when the investors leave our country, at least young people, women, people with disabilities have benefited from these programs. So those are the issues that we're mainly focusing as Buffalo City Municipality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Executive Mayor. We also have the privilege to hear from our host, the head of Infrastructure SA. Let me give head opportunity to introduce herself and also give us opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Moderator Ntate Mkhwanazi, and thank you to Honorable Minister SIDSSA as well as Mayor Faku and my colleague at the end there, James Woodward. My name is Mametse Masemola. I'm with Infrastructure South Africa. We are a central coordinating agency for infrastructure in the country. We are responsible for preparing and packaging high value, high impact infrastructure projects in the country. We have a total of over 300 strategic integrated projects worth about 1.3 trillion rand that we are coordinating, facilitating, and overseeing and reporting on their implementation. Coming to the issues of municipalities, Program Director, we were fortunate enough to be able to present to the President in a meeting called the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission Council. It sounds very long, PICC Council. It is the highest decision-making body in relation to the Infrastructure Development Act. And so Infrastructure South Africa derives its mandate from the Infrastructure Development Act, and that act provides for different types of coordinating mechanisms, and at the apex of that is the PICC Council. In that meeting, we were challenged by the President to say that Infrastructure South Africa onboards projects that are worth 1 billion rand and above. But what about municipalities? You know, because often enough, especially local municipalities, their infrastructure investment plans or individual projects do not necessarily go above the 1 billion rand minimum project value that Infrastructure South Africa will require as a qualifying criteria. So we pitched at that meeting what we call the Adopt a Municipality pilot program, of which Minister Hlabisa, sitting with us here today, was one of the ministers that also supported that particular pilot program to focus on relatively small municipalities, but whose governance is stable, whose audit outcomes are improving, but they have infrastructure challenges, and we hope to be sharing our work in relation to that pilot program with yourselves in this panel today. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, ma'am. We also have an industry expert, also one of our panelists here, Mr. James Woodward. He's going to share some insights, particularly around the on financing municipal infrastructure projects. So let me give him the opportunity to introduce yourself, sir, and then also begin to share some insight.
Great, Anthony, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is James Woodward. My accent is not from South Africa, that should be quite obvious. I'm Australian, but have been based in Kenya for the last 10 years. I lead KPMG's Transport and Infrastructure Advisory business across the continent. We have our infrastructure advisory professionals across Southern Africa, West Africa, and East Africa. And we do a lot of work around municipal finance for infrastructure projects. How should projects be structured, procured, and implemented to try to attract private sector capital, attract private sector delivery capability to ensure that resilient and inclusive infrastructure development can be undertaken at the municipal level. So for the purposes of today, I'm keen to, as the conversation evolves, to have the opportunity to share what are some of the things that are working and some of the things that are not working across the continent for consideration in the South African context. There are specific challenges for municipal infrastructure finance and projects that are quite different than those of the national level. Major issues around affordability, around how to approach rural municipalities versus metropolitan municipalities, how to deal with revenue allocation, the ability to ring-fence the limited revenue that you have, how to prioritize projects, what are the ones that are best suited for private sector investment, which are the ones that really need to be more supported by central government or some forms of subsidy. And while all those projects are important, trying to focus on the structures that are bankable for private sector and then standardization. And I think that'll be a key theme from today. There's over 250 municipalities that you have here in South Africa. Many countries across the continent have as many or more. But those challenges of how to develop, procure, and implement municipal infrastructure, there's an element of standardization you can get out of that. So we don't need to have 250 plus different approaches to how we will try to pull together projects that could attract private capital. When we have issues of institutional capacity constraints right down at the level of the municipality, how can we aggregate? How can we standardize? How can we create a portfolio of investment opportunities to attract investors in with structures that can potentially work? So we can talk, as the conversation evolves, we can talk a little bit about how do you access some of that support? What are some of the blended financing opportunities that were there? And critically, where we have gaps around project preparation, SIDSSA have an incredibly important role to play, but is there more support that could be out there, particularly from the rapidly changing development partner network as a source of support to try to scale and try to ensure that resilient and inclusive infrastructure development is achieved? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to encourage our audience to participate and give as much time as possible. Take questions. You're welcome to direct a question to a specific member of our panel, or you're welcome to pose a general question that any of our panelists can respond to. In the interest of time, I actually want to get straight into that Q&A session. I would like to give an opportunity. You can raise your hand, raise a question, so that we can get more insights from our panel.
Good morning. Afternoon. Ashley Rasool, Western Cape Government Economist, handling infrastructure advisory at the local government level. I think the question is aimed at infrastructure South Africa from a local government perspective. Capacity is generally an issue. project pipelines, etc., the packaging of these projects, where do these projects sit within a municipal spatial development framework, and how does that pipeline sort of lead to a basket of projects to get the financiers ready? And I'm particularly targeting the off-balance sheet funding. The infrastructure index at local government level across all 260 municipalities, all metros, is well below what it should be for industrialization, for transformation, for growth, and to seriously tackle the inequality and the sort of inherent systemic issues from the apartheid landscape from a spatial perspective. How does Infrastructure South Africa tackle that or view to tackle that? What is the mechanism is what I'm asking. I don't want to load the question. I'm saying what is the mechanism from where Infrastructure South Africa sits at a national level down to local government, specifically related to the off-balance sheet. So I'm talking about $1 billion and up size in terms of that critical size. And then it's issues pertaining as well from a consulting finance perspective is we talk alternative blended finance is a buzzword, but how exactly does that money find its way down into the municipal coffers? Municipalities are autonomous. Municipal councils basically decide what the infrastructure pipeline or path is going to be for that space. Who credit guarantees that? Because these national projects over here, and I think that is the Achilles heel that I'd really like to answer. I don't have the answer. I am trying to find that answer, and I'm working on it from where I sit in the treasury. What does that credit guarantee vehicle look like?
Thank you. And responses, sir?
While the question was directed to Infrastructure South Africa, but what I like to explain is that for Infrastructure South Africa to succeed in intervening in the infrastructure development at a local space, there should be cooperation between Infrastructure South Africa and municipalities, because municipalities are autonomous sphere of government to which development or intervention or support must not be imposed. Persuasion, engagement is key. I like the point said by James, because the message is clear. It all begins with planning. Funds can be available, but if your business plan is not bankable, you can't get funding. Now, for a bankable business plan, what it calls therefore is capacity building at a municipal level, because the show cannot be run by Infrastructure South Africa for many years to come. At the end of the day, the municipalities must run the show. They must champion the projects. They must complete the projects. Where COGTA comes in terms of capacity support, we have a structure or a wing called MISA, which is not going to conflict with Infrastructure South Africa, because MISA, we have a pool of qualified engineers, technicians, and all people with capacity when it comes to infrastructure development at local government level. We intervene. There are municipalities in which we are involved in terms of capital projects, because a major problem in South Africa, many municipalities are unable to utilize in full MIG allocation, simply because of capacity which they don't have. Therefore, we intervene through MISA, and that is why, as COGTA, we welcome the adopt a municipality, as my sister have spoken about, because we all have a responsibility to advance development at a local government where business thrive. Because everybody who wants to invest in South Africa will invest in a certain ward, in a certain municipality for the economy to grow. A ward, a municipality must be functional, must be clean. Crime in a ward, a municipality must be almost at a zero level as an ultimate goal, so that our municipalities can become an attraction point. Thereafter, once the funding is available, we need to concentrate on accountability, because in most cases, resources disappear through corruption. And that is what we must look at now, that if you mobilize the funding from other sectors, because municipalities are limited in terms of there's a poor collection, many people are unemployed, they can't be able even to pay even if they want to. So now, the mobilization of resources from other sectors is a way to go. Once resources are available, we need to look at them carefully, that they are not being misused and end up not serving the purpose intended for. Planning is key. Once planning is done in terms of projects, once the projects are off the ground, Infrastructure South Africa must play a role, COGTA through MISA must play a role, but we must capacitate municipalities. Because once the project is over, it should be municipalities' responsibility to ensure that it maintains it and it keeps it good for many years to come in order to contribute in the economic growth.
So if I can just add, Minister, what do we know? What are the facts on the table? We know that the fiscus is constrained, first and foremost. We know that there's not going to be any additional allocations that National Treasury is going to make over and above the equitable share. That is the allocations that are made to provinces and to municipalities, at least over the medium term expenditure framework. That's a fact. So the question then is, we know that municipalities have got an aggressive infrastructure build program, but we know that their funds are also limited. So there has to be a mechanism of matching, of raising additional financing into projects one way or the other than the fiscus. Because when we sit with the Minister of Finance, when we sit with the Treasury officials, they are at pains to explain that there is not going to be an additional 1 cent that's going to come through over and above what is already being allocated for in the next 3 years. And we know that investors are typically, they typically want to be able to look at 3 things: the project development risk, procurement risk, implementation risk, and they must weigh that. Then it points out to what Minister Tlhabisa is talking about, that the preparation and planning of these projects then become key. Because it's at the planning phase and preparation phase, then you then have a good sense of what is the funding pathway for this particular project. Is it going to be a PPP? Is it going to be a blended finance candidate project? Is it going to be a commercially viable project? Or if it is some kind of a social project, infrastructure project, does it have an element of unlocking innovative financing mechanisms? Then we'll talk a little bit more about what those things look like. But first, in the preparation and planning phase, we must have a good indication of what is this funding pathway for this particular project. Then we prepare and package that in that manner. There are a number of available instruments, and we know that some of them are going to be made available through the National Treasury as well. Firstly is the issues around a special purpose vehicle, the ability to ring fence project development costs and the funding thereof onto a specific project, so that when we look at the totality of a municipality, maybe the balance sheet is not very favorable. However, a specific project can be commercially viable or can be a PPP, and so it needs to be ring-fenced in some mechanism, other maybe say an SPV or I don't know, any other mechanism. National Treasury is also speaking about the potential now to do infrastructure bonds that are directly linked to a specific project in a municipality. And so we wait to see how that will unfold, because they're going to be very useful for projects that are essentially are able to crowd in private sector finance. That's going to be key in relation to that. Minister is also made a reference to the PPP environment, PPP to place, and key to it will be the unsolicited bid framework. It also gives municipalities an opportunity to work with companies, transactional advisors, and other people that are willing to take on the project development risk. And take away the pressure of putting funding for project preparation. And so we have an ability to do that through the unsolicited bid framework, and then get these projects to be constructed, but having shifted the risk away from the municipality to the private sector party, because they see that there is potentially some very good projects that can be supported at the municipal level. So a number of all of these things are going to be outlined over a period of time. It's not going to be easy, but we do believe that from a regulatory perspective, from a policy and regulatory perspective, as well as certain instruments that will be made available to support municipalities, that funding flow of funds is going to be will be realized in our view at least. And so those are some of the things that we're going to be piloting in the municipalities that we are supporting. It's only 4 of these municipalities that we have adopted. And so we're going to be piloting that, and to show that it actually is possible when you have the right support structures from, like the KPMG, for example, to be able to design these instruments properly to support municipalities to build momentum around their projects. Thanks.
Just a little bit to answer the second half of the question.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So some of the, I think some of the definitions are helpful. Different parts of the world, things might mean different things. So I guess when we're talking about off-balance sheet transactions, that is the gold standard that we're looking to try to achieve as much as possible. Remove the responsibility of public sector to allocate its very finite resources into supporting these projects. So where can that likely happen? Well, you're essentially looking at a project finance structure where the project itself can stand up without needing to be backstopped. The starting point there is you need to have clarity and ring fencing of the revenue streams that are going to flow through. So that by default starts to lend itself, and we can think very quickly, to utility-based projects. So we're talking about energy distribution. There are tariffs and there's income coming in there. It might be around water distribution as well. Those are the very easy ones. But then anything where you don't have that ring-fenced capability and a track record of cash flowing through, utilizing that off-balance sheet structure is going to be very difficult on a pure project finance basis. Getting commercial finance to come in and having confidence in the future cash flows that this project will generate. Now, when you can't achieve that, that's where the blended finance comes in. So what is our definition of blended finance? So blended finance is in my view, is the strategic allocation of concessional finance that is designed to fill gaps that exist in the short term, to encourage first mover projects, to build up that track record, to over time start to encourage commercial finance to come in. So if I break that down a little bit, from a blended finance structuring perspective, yes, we expect we will have some element of government budget that's going to be allocated in some of these projects. We might also, because of the social imperative, be able to attract grants. The grants could be coming from development partners, but the grants could also be coming from philanthropies, particularly around just energy transition. There's a lot of private grant money looking for high-quality projects in that space. The next tier down after the grants is the concessional financing. That can be coming from your multilateral development banks, it can be coming from your bilateral development finance institutions, where they are happy to take a sub-market return for the level of risk that they're taking, right? So you start stacking these things on top of each other. We don't want to completely crowd out commercial finance. We want to give them as much space as they're willing to take in the deal for it to be able to stack up. But you're de-risking the project by bringing in the government budgets, the grant financing, the concessional financing, so that the portion that's left there for commercial finance is something that makes sense for them. The theory there is over time, the more projects you can execute successfully and build that track record, the lower your portfolio risk becomes, the more comfortable commercial finance becomes, the less of the blended finance that you actually require. So with that on the theory side, you asked for an example of where this can potentially work. So we have examples in the water sector, for instance, in East Africa, where we have supported a bunch of development finance institutions saying, with all due respect, we don't want to have 260-odd separate discussions on how to resolve an issue at a municipal level. Let's come up with a structure that could potentially be replicated across a particular country. Let's work out exactly how we want to support it. We'll bring multiple donors and some grant money into a revolving fund. That fund will have a certain set of parameters that the likes of an ISA would be trying to help standardize, and then the availability for municipalities to apply to be funded by that mechanism. Now, what that does is build resilience, ultimately in the end projects being able to be delivered, but it creates a sense almost of competition amongst the municipalities. Right, there's the potential there to get some concessional financing in to support my municipality. What do I need to do to be able to access that? Well, the first things that those blended finance practitioners within this fund are looking for is a track record at the entity or the municipal level. Do you have a track record of fiscal responsibility and strong governance? Do you have clean audit reports that are coming out? Do you have capacity and the political will to implement this particular type of project? Assuming you can tick that, you now move to the specifics of the project, of what is actually going to sit there. And does the project fit the criteria for this particular fund? And that's where the likes of the transaction advisory and all that can come in on the specifics. But where that fund exists to help work on sorting out the viability gap funding in the short term, de-risk the project. Once the projects are done, that's not necessarily a full grant, it's concessional. Once your first phase of projects are done and the money is then repaid and we're proving track record, the money goes back into the fund. It doesn't go back to the development finance institution. And you run round two. Then you find more development finance institutions are happy when this starts to work and the fund gets bigger and you're able to keep cycling that capital through. So we've seen those structures be attempted to be implemented in a number of locations around the continent. But where you don't have, back to Mehmet's point and to Princess's point as well, if you don't have capacity at the municipal level to even be able to apply for something like that, is there someone or within the donor space, the development partner space, to provide you with access to that kind of service to be able to participate in some of these funds? So there's a complexity around it, but where you are trying to build out capacity over time, you have an entity like ISA that actually exists there that can be backstopped by broader support. These slightly more complex transaction structures are proving to work, are proving to be replicable, are proving to reduce risk, and therefore make it more interesting to the private sector to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a hand on this side.
Yeah.
The back.
Yeah, let's at the back there, say over to you. Then we'll come back to you, sir. And then.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the inputs. They've all been fantastic. I'm also an economist working with the Western Cape government. and I would love to see more investment in infrastructure. I think the inclusive work that was promoted by Buffalo City Mayor is fantastic. I want to pick up on planning and some of the standardization that's mentioned, and possibly this could be a question for the DDG from SIDSSA and for James, KPMG. And it's around corruption, which has been mentioned. It's a massive impediment to investment and growth in infrastructure and the resultant jobs and economic multipliers that can come from that. There is an organization called GIACC, GIAC. It's a global center that has developed methods in tackling corruption. They in fact believe that we have the tools to tackle corruption. It's a matter of implementation. One such standard that could be implemented in an investment pipeline is the ISO 37001 standard on anti-bribery. It can be implemented at a small project level or at a large project level. The best way to implement it is through independent verification of the standard by an outside auditor. So the question for SIDSSA is to say, can we have this kind of standard in our regulations and implement it on our national projects? And the question for KPMG is to say, is this the kind of standard that could build confidence necessary for investment? Thank you.
Thank you. DDG, respond? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that question. I'm not familiar with the ISO standard that you're referencing, I must say, on the anti-bribery component. What we know, and we know that works, is that if you apply the 5-case methodology that we apply for project preparation, we are scoping the project accordingly, so that you remove the ability of the project that ordinarily will cost 100 million rand. Suddenly, when it goes out on procurement, it's 1 billion rand. It cannot be. One of the things that work is also in municipalities or project owners that have got probity officers employed in those municipalities or provinces or state-owned entities. And then, of course, coupled with real-time auditing. That reduces the risk of potential procurement or corruption or leakage in the system. That you can legislate that the particular ISO standard, I wouldn't know, and I don't want to venture into that space in case I misspeak on behalf of the minister who's also a regulator or the National Treasury or someone else. But the real risk of procurement corruption is one that we must absolutely deter because we will not be able to work with any financing institutions if there is a whiff of corruption in a particular project. That much we know. But then I'm ready and willing so that we speak about it a little bit more. We engage on it and we see how, from our side, the elements that you are referencing around those ISO standards can be embedded in the manner in which we prepare and package projects. Thanks.
Yeah. James, do you want to comment on the standard?
Sure. So I'm very passionate about this project, this process of trying to get more private capital into the infrastructure space, because the further you move along that continuum, the higher the governance standards are there around how these projects are prepared, procured, and implemented. And there's a number of mechanisms there that I think are working quite well at the moment. So this almost like the challenge fund, the concept we were just talking about here, a revolving credit facility that all municipalities who are interested in doing, let's say, a water distribution project of a certain nature, you can all apply. One of the first criteria is going to be around that quality of municipal level governance that has existed to date. You don't want to get cancelled out at that first hurdle. Perhaps that will happen. And then as you move along through the development phase of the project, if there are issues that are popping up with the way procurement is done, that financing will be pulled back as well. So there's a really important element there around the expectations of how governance will be managed being transparently seen by those that live in those communities. Why is it that our municipality continues to fail to qualify, and we're seeing other municipalities start to do better and get access to some of this blended finance? Why is it that we always seem to get caught at the procurement hurdle or whatever it is, but there is transparency there as to why you have failed to qualify? So there's that element of competition where there is not enough government budget that actually exists, and you need to go to sources of finance that have higher expectations around governance, that there is very much a trend towards that needing to be in place. The other element, or another approach to this kind of finance, in particular for social projects to deal with that corruption issue, is the very dramatic shift, as an example, that we've seen in US government policy towards aid just in the last few months. I was in Washington 3 weeks ago, and we're talking with the US government around what does the future of aid look like. Number one, they're opening it up to middle-income countries as well for certain focused sectors. Water is one of them. But actually saying we're going to move away entirely from funding upfront for social projects that don't economically stack up. We're going to do it based on payment by results, or payment based on implementation. So if you want to partner with us as a municipality somewhere in Africa, we're happy to say we will subsidize this project. We will even potentially fully fund it. But our cash is going to come at the end. You are going to put the cash up. You are going to run the procurement. You are going to oversee construction. Whereby you achieve that with high standards of governance, we will reimburse you either partially or fully, but you have to show us the result, and then you will be reimbursed. So there's inherent governance structures that are built into that as well. The embarrassment of failing, the inability to deliver when the opportunity was there in front of you. I think some of these mechanisms are very, very interesting as a way to force increased governance. And all of that verification will be done independently. It's not a self-reporting, we think we did a really good job in how we procured or implemented. That is where your independent asset verification agent, your auditor, is whoever's been agreed to be appointed, will come in and do that work. So we're seeing that in the development partner sector, a strong shift towards protecting governance. And so those are two of the mechanisms there that I think are really help creating competition and creating payment back once you have achieved what you said you would do with zero corruption through the process.
Thank you for that. We are approaching our the end of our time contract, but I'm going to give an opportunity to take 2 questions. Yourself, sir. I would also like to take a question on the other side of the room. Before I hand over to Honorable Executive Mayor for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. My point of clarification goes to the Executive Mayor. It's very clear how the government identifies projects from the central level. What is not clear for the people of Zambia is how the municipality comes up with the modalities in which they use or criteria in trying to identify projects at a municipality level. I want to hear more so that we know at what point is the community engaged in trying to identify a project. Thank you so much.
Perhaps let's just take the other question. Yes. Over to you, ma'am.
I had raised my...
Sorry, apologies, sir.
Hi, thank you to the panel for a very, very informative session. My name is Malini Padiachi Salmon. I'm a professional civil engineer and the CEO of MPA MOT. One of the panelists alluded to the fact around master planning. My question to the panel is, I believe that that's critical to unblock any opportunities in the infrastructure space for stakeholders to be actively informed in terms of some of the challenges, some of the costs that would need to be incurred in terms of upgrading of facilities, etc. So my question to the panel is, at a national level, from a master planning perspective, and I'm talking road traffic and transportation planning, bulk water services, sanitation, stormwater, because of climate resilience infrastructure that we need to be putting in place. Is there a fund that's considered or that's being put aside to consider these sort of initiatives at a national level, but also more importantly, considering we have SADC member states represented here as well, at a regional level? And should that not then be something that we need to, as on the African continent, be looking at very, very closely to be able to initiate?
Thank you very much. Let me ask our panel members to respond. Executive Mayor?
Okay. Okay.
There was a direct question to the
Okay.
Executive Mayor, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One of the main things that we do at the local government, we have an integrated development plan, which is called the IPP, where we engage communities for development within their areas, but also we have a unit for spatial planning in our areas. And we also look into economic factors within our areas, like you would look into Buffalo City. We're an automotive city. We're the home of Mercedes-Benz. We're the only port in the Southern Africa, which is a river port, which that port must export agricultural, manufacturing projects. So that is how you do. You engage your different stakeholders within your city in terms of which developmental areas your city wants to focus on. So each and every financial year, the executive mayor of the municipality need to have an IDP process where you engage with communities. So you take that into consideration as you will go into your annual budget, which will start now on the 1st of July. So you take all this planning that you have and you submit it to National Treasury for it to be approved. And that is how your planning starts as a municipality. We believe as the South African government, especially at the local level, for you to have an integrated infrastructure development, you need to engage communities with their own development. So that is how we do it in South Africa. But what I really would want to see moving forward, and which we appreciate from in terms of our national government, the National Treasury, the 1 trillion in terms of infrastructure, but also the framework which the DDG was explaining to in terms of unsolicited bids. I think we need to fast track those processes when investors want to come into our local municipalities, because there's a lot of red tape and which makes investors to go away and not want to invest. So we want to see that minister, that framework to be fast tracked. But what I also appreciated from what James was saying is that it now forces municipality to promote good governance. For you to be able to get blended finance or grants or any kind of assistance, it forces us to make sure that in terms of our risk adjustment strategy, we plan better in terms of our project planning, because that is the weakness that in terms of local government that we're currently facing with. But also the integration of Infrastructure South Africa and MISA, as Minister has alluded. MISA has specialized engineers, and Buffalo City, we're also getting assistance currently from MISA in terms of our water and sanitation, because we're struggling in that aspect. And I think we'll also have a conversation with James after this session. So I think municipalities must be more exposed to these opportunities. But what is critical, Minister? It is the technical capacity at local government level. We need to start to professionalize technical people An engineer is supposed to know when they build a road at N2, after 10 years, this road must be maintained. But also us who are leading this municipality at a political level, intensive training and capacity must be given to us. You adjust after a year or two when you are at the local government level, because there's also a lot of red tape. But I think Infrastructure South Africa is going to help us. But they must also focus in terms of demographics, how our municipalities are located. Eastern Cape is one of the biggest provinces where Nelson Mandela is coming from. At times when these opportunities come, they don't come to our province. We are the only rural metro in South Africa, and I would want to plead with Infrastructure South Africa to bring more opportunities to Buffalo City, especially in the automotive and manufacturing. We're open for business as Buffalo City. We have a lot of interest in our city of automotive companies that want to come and invest in Buffalo City. So it will be a great honor for us to be assisted in terms of fiscal capacity. As we know, municipalities are struggling in terms of revenue collection, especially if your municipality is mainly rural and you depend on other. We must not be treated the same as the Western Cape, City of Cape Town. I have a budget of about 10 billion, City of Cape Town about 138 billion. You can see the difference within that. Demographics must not, we want inclusivity. Buffalo City is also one of the metros that in South Africa that has been selected in terms of our sustainable goals to promote equality, wet and sanitation. So in terms of those six goals, we are working very hard as the city, but we want to take the support from the minister whenever we want assistance. The minister is there to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think Honorable Councillor has, Executive Mayor has, in fact, wrapped the session for us. There was that question, perhaps if we can just give, if you allow me for us just to give a minute before we close the session, just for us to respond to that specific question that was raised.
Yeah, I can respond to that question in terms of master plan, in the sense that it develops from the IDP, because there will be no one master plan for the whole country because areas are not the same. Now, the IDP together with DDM is what is a solution, because DDM looks at a district level where all departments plan together, all capital projects, and then identify which can be funded from within, which can be funded from the provincial or national government level. So now, the working relationship between the municipalities and DDM is a way to go. Buffalo City, the president has intervened because we have been there a month and a half ago. We realized the constraints they are experiencing. That is why the reviewed white paper wants to address the question of funding, because municipalities are not the same. There are those who were previously advantaged prior 1994, and those which were prior disadvantaged. So now, we are engaged with the treasurer that when it comes to funding to our municipalities, one-size-fits-all principle should not work, because municipalities are not the same. But what is going to help is the master plan through DDM, District Development Model. The District Development Model is a planning at a bigger space, a combination of municipalities. for colleagues not from South Africa, we have 257 municipalities, but we have 52 districts. When you group them into a bigger space, because they share a number of commonalities and they are next to each other, and you look at the nature of the district, what capital projects that needs to be done in order to ensure inclusive development that is resilient. And it is interesting that almost now we are going to sing from the same hymn book in South Africa when it comes to DDM, because there were municipalities who were not compatible. But the intervention that was done as COGTA, especially with the Western Cape and the city of Cape Town, in 2 months to come, we will have a breakthrough. We will all be working through a similar process, that the planning should be done at a district level and different revenues should flow in order to ensure that we advance development.
Thank you very much. On that note, I would like to give a vote of thanks to yourself, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister. Thank you, DDG. Thank you very much, Executive Council, and thank you very much, James, for your insights. And let me also thank our participants. You asked great questions, and that triggered more insight. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. The session is officially adjourned.
200 times of not giving up. I can forgive, but I share my fire with yours. It's easy without the time that's making us unsure. We're talking on the surface, all right where the hurt is. Playing house in broken homes, all right in the furnace. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. You swear you thought that you had me pinned, uncovered, but I'm still under your skin. Reaching for the final moment, so we can say less things over. Again as you pull me under. I can forgive, but I share my fire with yours. It's easy without the time that's making us unsure. We're talking on the surface, all right where the hurt is. Playing house in broken homes, all right in the furnace. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. Can we just
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and exclusive access to all things VIP. Try 1 month free.
Share, bring me your love to a broken heart, mend it back up. Show me that you care. Show me your word. Do 100 times if not giving up. I can forgive, but I share my fire with yours. It's easy without the time that's making us unsure. We're talking on the surface, alright where the hurt is. Playing house in broken homes, alright in the furnace. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. You swear you thought that you had me pinned, uncovered, but I'm still under your skin. Reaching for the final moment, so we can see less things over. Again as you pull me under, under, under. I can forgive, but I share my fire with yours. It's easy without the time that's making us unsure. We're talking on the surface, alright where the hurt is. Playing house in broken homes, alright in the furnace. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet. Can we just be? Stay bittersweet.
Get YouTube Music Premium with this toggle thingy.
Share